Don't you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The Deep Blue Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
Hey everybody, welcome to this session of the Deep Blue Project, or as we're starting to kind of get known as, is just DBP. Today I am excited to have with me a former police officer who has turned into a yoga instructor, and he uses that yoga instruction to deal with some of the things that the job has brought to him. So I'm going to let him introduce himself to you, give him a little bit more about himself. Welcome to the show, Vance Row. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, I am good. Thanks for having me, Chris. Just enjoying a Sunday morning together. This is nice. So I'll take a quick second here, and I'll just give you a little bit about me. So I was in the police world for 22 years total. That's as a full-time police officer in Ocean City, Maryland. Prior to that, I actually was a summer cop, which, you have in all these resort towns on the Atlantic Ocean that bring in summer help, and I was one of them. I started at 19 years old, and I knew I wanted to get into police work. I just wasn't old enough at the time, and just kind of got my foot in the door. And I like to say that my mom found a newspaper article, which, how horribly does that date me? Like newspapers, but
right.
It's been a minute now as far as public safety goes. I am currently my full-time job is a police and fire dispatcher. I'm still in Ocean City, and that actually came out of injury and not necessarily retirement, but it kind of all relates as to my story about how I get from police officer to yoga teacher. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my law enforcement career. Like everybody else, I start out and I'm working patrol and I'm making arrests and I'm testifying in court, writing reports, all the stuff that everybody thinks of when they think of patrol cop. Very early on, I'm approached by our leadership of our local FOP to be on the executive board, and I am approached by one of our lieutenants about getting into an admin assignment and working with him to do recruiting, backgrounds, training, and stuff like that. So I kind of have this like whole other world that I didn't really know existed. When I think about being in police work, like, oh yeah, I'm going to throw handcuffs on people. That's the job. But oh wait, there's this whole office admin background part to that I had never really thought of. And here I was 3 years into it, and I'm deeply involved in that. So I did that for a lot of years. That ended up transitioning into what I did for the back end of my career, which was I became our first polygraph examiner. And that was 12 weeks on an Army base in the middle of Pennsylvania. This is in 2013. And then I came back and I built our polygraph program, which is nice to be able to, I had a part of something that will live on now, because these guys are still using everything that I had kind of built. Out of that actually came a regional police polygraph association as well that covers the mid-Atlantic states of 9. So let me talk about some of the negative stuff. All right. It's not all, unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
So when I work in a resort town, we don't work the typical 4 days a week, 5 days a week. We are assigned 10-hour shifts, 4 days a week, but then summertime brings more people, brings more special events, means we got to work more, which tends to mean that I was going to work 5 to 6 nights a week. And that was great in the beginning. Because in the beginning, it just meant I'm doing something that I really do love. I'm making extra money. It's making my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, very happy that we have, extra money to do whatever we want with. But about 5 or 6 years in, I remember just getting kind of tired of it and just kind of being like, is there something more? Is there something else out there than just ruining somebody else's good time? Because that's what I felt like I was doing. So then you get to 2013 into 2014, and every summer I'm still going back and I'm still working my patrol schedule of 50, 60, 70-hour work weeks. And then I'd get to the wintertime, and wintertime for us, not like snowy, but wintertime being like September through April. And I would be inundated with doing polygraph testing for applicants for the following summer, because we'd have to hire 100 summer cops of every summer. And just knowing your background of being a police leader, it's incredible how many applicants have to come in through your process to get to 100. So if you can think of that, and me being the only polygraph examiner, the amount of work that I was doing, and I was working like 12-hour days just doing polygraphs, which everybody's like, what's the deal, man? You sit at an office. Yeah, but I'm prying out people's like deepest, darkest secrets. And that stuff started to affect me too. When they would tell me about things that had happened to them, I didn't account for that when I was going through polygraph school, how many people have been victims of crime, and that I would be the first person that they would tell. I also didn't realize how many people have done some terrible things to other people that were like, hey, I'm just going to go be a cop somewhere. The stuff that affected me was people doing things to other people. So I'm working a lot of hours. I'm not taking care of myself in any way, shape, or form. I didn't understand what the idea of self-care was. I had hobbies at a time, but at this point I'm not doing it. I hadn't done it for years. The time that I would have off, I am spent asleep or passed out on the couch or drinking. I mean, none of which are what we'd say are like healthy self-care practices at this point. So I'm doing this up until the summer of 2016. I'm like, and I come home after a particularly difficult midnight shift, and I tell my wife, I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And at this point, I'm nine years from retirement, and she's like, well, you can't quit tonight, but we can work on figuring out how we can get you out. Maybe you have to work into the fall, into the spring, do your polygraphs, and then by next summer you can get out. I never got there. In October of 2016, I got hurt, and I fell off my bike during a special event. I tore my knee up. That knee injury ended up causing nerve damage in my knee that makes my left foot burn all the time, which is a really, really stupid injury. But the idea of wearing socks went out the door like 8 years ago. The idea of wearing shoes, I don't really like that either. Or I should say my foot doesn't really like that either. Anyway, that injury ended up ending my police career. But my police career doesn't end for 6 more years. I'm kind of stuck in this limbo of, well, you're not a cop, but you're not retired either. So I'm just kind of not doing anything. I'm earning a paycheck, but that's not enough for me. I want to work, and I want to feel like what I'm doing matters, and it didn't anymore. So for the first 2 years, 16, 17 into 18, they had originally told me that they thought I would get better, that they thought that the nerve would regenerate and I would be able to go back to work. And I have in my head that if we get to the fall of 18, this is it. I'm going to either go back or somebody's going to make a decision that I can't be a cop and we're just going to move on. Well, we get to the fall of 18 and there's no decision. I didn't get any better. I'm kind of just like waiting around. And I actually go to my police leaders and I said, listen, I don't think I'm going to be a cop anymore. Why don't you guys hire somebody else? Why don't you make another police corporal, and why don't you make me into a civilian or something? Because I'm not really helping you anymore. They listened to me, but there's no action. It's just this lack of decision making ability. And I don't know if it was city leadership, police leadership. I don't really care. I'm left to twist and no decision making. And the reason that I think that hurts so much is when something would come up and they'd be like, hey, there's a really big event coming up. It's in 2 days. Can you help us? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'll work 12 hours, whatever. I'll work whatever you need. Hey, there's this big project that's going on. Can you handle it? Yeah, of course. Like I'm your guy. I'll take care of it. And that just has been my reputation. But here I am now in a position where I need something. Nobody's listening now. That hurts. After you put all your blood, sweat, and tears in for as many years as I did. So that starts a pretty bad spiral. And that's when my mental health really started to deteriorate. I had always drank to some degree. Like that was our fun time. That was fun in college. That was fun when I first got into police work. That was a way that we could always blow off steam. But in these times, 14, 15, 16, and then it just started getting gradually worse. It started to become like every day, and it started to become more and more. And I couldn't stop until I was like passed out. So it started to get to a point where it was like 3 and 4 times a week. And to the point where my wife would make comments to me like, hey, I'm kind of worried about you. I'm worried about like your employment, but nobody knew at work. Nobody knew anything. I was always on time. I don't smell like booze, anything like that. It's just that's how I would make it through the night. If I was at work, I had something to focus on. If I was off, I was just alone with my thoughts. I had stopped drinking a couple different times, and this is like 2019 or late 2018, late 2019. And I had quit for like a week or 2 weeks or a month, and it's like I'm trying to prove to myself, hey, I'm not an alcoholic. And I'm like, all right, great, I'm not an alcoholic. That means I can go back and I can drink some more. And I would make up for lost time. And I would like try to drink the amount that I would have drank in 30 days. And that finally really comes to a head in the fall of 2019 when my wife takes videos of me and acting like a just idiot. And then she has a conversation with me the next day, and she is she doesn't say it shape up or ship out. She says, we need to talk because I'm concerned. And essentially what I'm hearing in her message is, you are a mess. And so she shows me these, and I'm deeply, deeply embarrassed. I don't want to have this conversation again. I mean, you can't imagine how embarrassing that is. This person that you love and respect most that is like showing you this, and I am like embarrassed by it. And so I was like, I'm not going to drink today. And then I got competitive and which is kind of, I guess, my nature, coming from a football background into police work. And I would string a couple days together, then I'd string a couple weeks together, string a couple months together. And I'm going to tell you right now that I didn't intend to quit forever that day. I just didn't ever want to have that conversation again. But as we stand here today, November 12th of this year will be 5 years since I've had a drink. And I actually, in the first like 18 months, 2 years, it was hard. I would see other people drink and I'm like squeezing my hands because I don't want to drink. I can't drink. And then I started to work on some of the other things, like, why were you drinking? I'm going to back up a little bit. In 2018, I start having the thoughts of maybe I don't want to be here anymore. And it starts with generally, like, I would go to bed at night and just kind of hope I wouldn't wake up. And if I didn't wake up, I wouldn't have to deal with any of this bullshit anymore. And then it became more of like, all right, well, I that's not happening for me, and I guess I'm too young for that, so I'm going to have to do something else. I came up with a plan in my mind. I had a method. I had a location. I did not have a specific day, but it became constant. It was pretty regular. And then we had a local police officer kill himself. And that was in November of 2018. His name was Aaron Hudson. He worked in Salisbury City for 27 years. And that rocked me because I was suicidal at the same time. And I watched what it did to his like police family, to the Salisbury Police Department, to the city of Salisbury as a whole. They still feel it. And here we are, we're 6 years later at this point, and they still feel it. So that's the first time that I can use the words and I can actually say it to my wife and say, hey, I'm having these thoughts of killing myself. And I know that's not right. So she was the only one that knew, and my family care doctor was the only one that knew. I didn't tell anybody else. We worked on some medicines, but at the time I was still drinking. So I mean, listen, I know that's not right. You know, I'm on medicine, but I'm washing it down with a lot of booze. So that's not the medically approved way to do it. I'm aware. So anyway, the drinking had gone on for a little bit longer. The videos happen. My wife, you know, snaps those. And then I'm all of a sudden, I'm kind of into this sobriety, and I'm not really sure. I'm pretty fragile at the time. And it's within those first couple days that I actually go to a studio yoga class for the first time. And I just want to back up for a second. I've had a couple significant back injuries in my life during my police career. And it's not that I'd never heard of yoga. It's that I had done it for like recovery purposes, or like kind of a not weightlifting, not running kind of thing, like a change of pace kind of workout. And I always talk to myself out of ever going to a studio because, number one, I don't look like a yoga person. I mean, I have been on Instagram too, and I don't look like that. I am a former offensive lineman. I am not a small person. I sweat an awful lot. So, anyway, I can't explain it, but within a couple days after I stopped drinking, I stopped talking terrible to myself, and I just went and tried it. And I had this immediate connection to community, which I didn't realize how badly I needed, because I had pulled myself away from my police family. Part of that was because of the injury. Part of that was because of like police leadership. And then the other part was I'm tired of being hurt by this, so I'm going to withdraw myself. I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of support at the time, and that's what the yoga community really did for me. I don't necessarily do it for like workout purposes. I do it more for my mind, and I want to explain that why. I had so many negative emotional thoughts, opinions, that I had never really let myself be still and be quiet. You can actually like let your mind get clear. It's amazing. And you can finally let your inner intuition speak, which I know that sounds like really hippy dippy, but you have all this stuff twirling around in you. And we're not very apt to allow ourselves to be still and to be quiet because we feel like it's uncomfortable. That's probably why you need it. I didn't understand that until I got into practicing yoga, where you are completely still and quiet in the beginning and at the end of your practice. Yes, there are poses. Yes, you are getting yourself into some crazy, funky balance stuff, but that's not really what it's all about. It's all about trying to be in the present moment. Because if you try to balance on one foot and think about something that you said 8 years ago, and you wish you said something else, and your mind starts to wander, you're going to fall down. If you can stay right there in that present moment, and if you can feel like all four corners of your foot, and you push down real hard, and maybe you soften the muscles in your shoulders, like you can stay there and you can stay in that pose, and then you use your breath. if you worry about your to-do list and like, hey, do I have enough dog food at home? Do I need to go to the grocery store and buy more dog food? Again, you're going to fall down. It's a lesson in being in the present moment. So very early on in me going to yoga classes, I told my wife, I came home one day and I said, I am going to teach this to people like me. And I had a teaching background. A lot of the life that I had, like I told you before, was in admin. And I'm used to standing up in front of people. I'm used to telling them about police related things. And I really thought, hey, they know me, they trust me. They'll be like, yeah, Vance is into this yoga thing. Let's try it. And so I went to yoga teacher training. And that was a 200-hour class. It's like 1 weekend a month for 6 or 7 months, I think we did. I keep learning about more and more different things. Like I'll meet a yoga teacher and they'll tell me about, hey, do you know about this? Do you know about this? Do you know about this? And I end up going through a yoga teacher training called Warriors at Ease, which is a yoga and meditation program that was built in the military. And it's for folks with PTSD to help them calm their minds down and sleep. That was the single best thing that I've been through at this point, because it actually started to teach me about brain science, and it started to teach me about brain health and nervous system regulation. That's why I started to feel better. I never understood it. I never knew why I felt better after a class, but now I do. And I think that helps me in how I teach, because I'm going to tell you what it is that you're starting to feel. When you start to understand what it is that you are starting to feel, and you can start to process that, and you can start to feel your nervous system settling, there's a lot of power in that. I've only been teaching yoga for about 3 years. I was teaching a lot of studio classes here locally, and it wasn't necessarily to the crowd that I was looking to teach. The goal for me was, I want to teach people like me, people that have never been exposed to it. They're not necessarily going to come to a yoga studio. So what I've decided to do is to kind of take a break from studio classes, and I go where I'm needed. If agencies want to hire me to come for the day and teach like 2 or 3 classes to try to get as many people as possible, or there's a company that I've just recently started working for called O2X. They host workshops, and part of their workshop is generally a yoga practice and an I-rest meditation. So they'll send me to certain places to teach that part of their class. I have found a tremendous amount of healing benefit in the practice of yoga. So because I did, I want to share that with other people. That became my thing. I'm not saying it's the thing for everybody. I'm not saying everybody's got to do yoga, but it just became hugely beneficial for me. And that's why I share it with other people now.
Gotcha. There is a lot to unpack, is there? But I think some of the stuff I want to go back and kind of touch on, and this is where we have that reason that we do what we do, is there's a lot of things that happen to us in our careers, and I think you touched on a lot of that. We deal with, and we're so good with dealing with our job. Many of the things that you had talked about are things that I've experienced myself, the coping mechanisms, and I want to specifically go back to alcohol. There's coping mechanisms. Like we all know, I'm not telling any cop or any first responder out there what you're doing or what you're not doing. Look, we've all done this. We've all been in this. We've all been in this job for a long time. And even if you've only been in it for a minute, we start to get into those coping mechanisms that aren't so great. And we talk about them all the time. And one of the bad things, just like you, myself, in my young career, is whenever we had a problem, it seemed to always start with alcohol. And I can remember back when we had issues, when you had certain trying times, or you had a bad call, or everybody just wanted to go and relax. Well, go and relax meant we're headed to the bar and we're going to do beers and we're going to do shots. And you get to that point where sometimes you're like, how did I get home?
Yep. We use it, and
You're
we don't,
peeking out the window and going, is my car okay?
and
Did
we
I
don't,
drive? I hope to God I didn't.
and we don't use it necessarily just for bad. We use it for good too.
Right.
So if
We
we're
use it
going to
for everything.
celebrate, we're going to celebrate somebody's promotion. We're going to celebrate somebody's getting married, having a baby, whatever.
Right.
We're probably going to do it with some booze. And I'll be clear. I am not someone to stand on a soapbox and tell everybody not to drink. That is not what I'm saying.
No.
I'm saying I can't drink, and
Right.
I will be supportive to anyone that wants to walk the same journey with me, that wants to see what it's like to not drink. But I don't tell people they can't. And when I say like the first 18 months, 2 years that I was casual, like I couldn't go to a bar. I couldn't be around other people that were drinking.
Right.
I'm okay with it now. I've done my own work at this point, and
Sure.
I understand where it was coming from. I understand why I was drinking. I understand why I can't do it anymore. But again, I'm not pounding on a desk and telling people that no one is allowed. I just want everybody to have healthy coping mechanisms. So that's what I started to teach about. I've started doing self-care things and how to take care of yourself, because 25 years is a really long time. And
Right.
I know that a lot of us will say, yeah, that career goes in like the blink of an eye. But how well are you taking care of yourself in that 20 or 30 years? It's already that you're working shift work. It's already that you're working extra shifts. So you're missing all these things that have to do with family or personal relationships. How many friendships have you lost because you kept having to say no every time they asked you to do something because your job always got in the way? And
Right.
that's not
Right.
the thing that's supposed to define you as a man, which I say that now, but 10 years ago, I would have had a very different opinion of that. So now, some of the big things that I talk about are ways to de-stress. So the big one right now for me is sleep, because we don't get enough sleep. And I'm not saying that you sleep like half your day. I'm saying, can you find 7 to 8 hours that you can devote to it? And can you wake up at the same time every day? Can you go to bed at the same time every day? I know shift work sucks. I am aware. And it was when I got into my mid 30s and I was still working on midnight shifts. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? I can't sleep anymore during the day. And, I never attributed to the fact that it's probably because I drank 2 energy drinks overnight and had a cup of coffee at like 5:30 in the morning. Oh, why can't I sleep? I don't know. Or when I do go to sleep, why can I only sleep for 2 hours? And then it makes me a miserable prick the next day when I have to go back and I have no sleep. It's shifting your focus, shifting your priorities. The first one being sleep. And everybody, listen, I was a young cop too. And I remember the people that were like, I haven't slept in 3 days, and they wear it like a badge of honor. Like, I don't need sleep. And look, at some point you have got to shut it down, and you've got to let your body do its restorative functions. Otherwise you're just going to shorten your lifespan. And police officers, we already have, this is all right. So 12 years ago, I go through supervisor school, and I remember we had to do a project, and I can't remember how we came up with it, but the 4 of us that were working on this project decided we were going to talk about wellness. And I saw a stat when I was going through that on average, police officers live 5 years beyond their retirement. And that's awful.
Right.
So the idea that you would spend 25 years devoted to something to get 5 years, on the back end. Listen, I am no kind of finance person. I am no kind of accountant, but those numbers don't add up. So how do we lengthen that number after retirement? And how can we enjoy that? Well, we got to start taking better care of ourselves in the 20 or 25 years.
That's why you and I and all the people that we have on this podcast and things that we talk about are our past. And we talk about the things that have led us to where we are today. I wish I knew this, or somebody had told me this 20 years ago. And I was able to, I think we go back to what we were just talking about. Like, yeah, I have a friend of mine who I've had on the podcast often, and she does a lot on police officer suicide and things like that. She's a Chicago police officer, and we talk a lot offline about things, and we just said that same thing. There's nothing wrong for some people. It just depends on your makeup about going out and enjoying a beverage with your friends or having whatever. If you're using it to cope with pain or to cope with issues or to forget things, that's a little different than going out with your friends and having a beverage. But I think that a lot of people don't realize, for us, we missed out on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Our job is, we were so committed, and we're so committed to everything that we do in our job, that our whole life matriculates around that. If the phone rings, we're running. If this happens, we're going. We always have to look for that next thing that and when we're working, we're great.
Yeah.
While we're working, we're awesome. Right. I am a damn good police officer. I'm going to say it. You can argue with me until I'm blue in the face. Look, I am good at my job, but for 20 plus years, I sucked at life.
Right. When you're away from the job. Yep.
And my life outside of the job was suffering. It got to that moments where you're kind of in your own space. Your mind is running around. Your family is like, what's wrong with you? You get to that point where you just can't cope anymore, and you're looking for everything else to feed that mind space, so you're not thinking about the bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing to cope with that? You're either doing alcohol, or you're doing pills, or you're out late at night, or you're trying to do things to occupy your mind so you're not quiet.
Right.
Because quiet is bad to you.
Quiet hurts.
Yeah, quiet is bad. All the bad shit comes back when it's quiet. You know, I had an opportunity to go to a class a couple months ago. I think I'm a couple months. Geez, I tell you, time. You talk about time going fast. A year ago, not even a couple months ago. But it was a guy at in Quantico, and he works with the FBI students, and he is a sleep doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And all he talks about is just that, being able to give your body time to recuperate through normal sleep, not sleeping all day, but finding those moments and being able to quiet yourself, as you said. And I think that's what's great about your position here with yoga, and giving you that extra time and that extra coping mechanism that's healthy. And if it works for you, great. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give you options to say, hey, this could work for you, or this could work for you, or this could work for you. But do us a favor. Don't be like me and wait 25 years.
Right.
Because we want you to be able to, one, do this job, but we also want you to be able to live a healthy life.
Mm-hmm. I don't want so much. I heard somebody. I've heard our forensics people talk about crime scenes before, and they'll talk about, in every crime scene, the perpetrator always leaves something behind, and they're always taking something with them. And it's kind of the game of police work sometimes in forensics, is finding those little pieces and stuff like that. This career is very much the same way. You are leaving pieces of you at different spots throughout your career, and you're constantly picking up things that maybe you don't want there. So what are you doing that helps you alleviate those things? And I just didn't understand that. You know, when I kind of talk about my story, it's not one thing. It's not, I saw this bad wreck in this year and then all of a sudden everything changed. It was all these levels of cumulative stress that just kept coming on top of each other. And then finally I just couldn't take it anymore. It just, that's where it got to for me. So you have to find a way to, like lift the lid and let a little bit of the pressure out so that we can all get to the finish line and not just like limp across the finish line, but like come across to the point where I'm going to have a fruitful life, and that we're not going to just stay in this world for 40 or 50 years because that's all we know. And we're not going to just, like maybe retire and go into another police job. Like, you are a person. There is somebody behind that uniform. There is somebody behind that badge. And at times I think we lose that. I know I did. It was the first thing that I would tell anybody about me, that like I'm a cop, or when people would introduce me, they're like, "Oh, this is Vance. He's a cop." There's a guy in there, I swear.
It becomes your identity, and we take that, right? I mean, we're good at it. That's what our identity becomes. But we lose everything else. I think you make a perfect point. There's this picture that I always see that pops up on LinkedIn every couple of weeks when people talk about leadership. And it's usually a police officer standing there, and he's a little bit taller than the other person. And they show all these blocks that are missing from this police officer because he's always giving a piece to someone else.
Right.
And that's a good thing in some instances to fill that spot, but it's a bad thing in others, because those voids of that piece you're giving, it depends on what you're filling that void with. And for a lot of us, it's filling that void with all the shit that we've dealt with from day one till now. And I've been calling it since we started, is you need to find a way to clean out your mental closet. You need to have, look, again, I'm like you. Dude, I ain't telling you something like trying to make you change anything, because my dumb ass ain't done it for 50 years. So, I mean, I am just learning this. I tell people, I'm closer to the end than I am to the beginning.
Right.
But unfortunately, it's taking me this long to realize, and things smack me in the face and go, look at all the shit that you put yourself through, and look at all the crap that you've done to try to cope with it instead of just facing it.
Yep.
And finding a way, a healthy, clean way to give that shit away. You'll never get rid of it. It's part of your life. Things that you've dealt with, things that we've seen, things that that's just part of being a first responder. It's part of being a firefighter. It's part of being an EMT. It's part of being a cop. It's not just limited to police officers. We all who are in this business do that. But how are you coping with that in a relatively great way, whether it's through seeing a therapist, whether it's through peer counseling, whether it's through yoga, whatever works for you, please start now. Don't wait until you're 50 plus years old. And I'm going to tell you, there was a time when I got to the same point as you, where I thought I was doing well and I thought things were okay. And then something occurred and I find myself walking in circles out in the driveway all alone going, what am I going to do next? And I was on that brink myself. What am I going to do next? Where do I go from here?
Right.
And I think one of the things that I want to do, and I have done with the reason for doing this podcast and being able to speak to people like yourself, Vance, is to let people know, the young people know, look, don't get to that point. Start finding yourself a way to cope with things that are healthy. And if you're older and you've been doing this job as long as we have, I know you feel this way. There ain't nobody that's done this job that hasn't got there at some point in their life. If you have not had a coping mechanism or a way to clean your mental closet out, because you come to a point of no return sometimes. And we're seeing that. We're unfortunately seeing that across the nation with the number of officers that are starting to commit suicide. I mean, please just find another way.
Right.
Find another way.
Right. And it's So I'm gonna make a suggestion for, and this is just because of the life in general, um, because of the amount of traumas that a first responder is going to be a part of. Um, find somebody that you can talk to, let it out. And I'm not telling you that's got to be a counselor. I'm not telling you that's got to be a therapist. You got to find somebody that you trust, that you can let that stuff out to, where it doesn't just build up and just like get heavy on your heart. Now, and I'm very open about what I do. I mean, I see a therapist every week still. I will never be whatever quote unquote fixed is, but I'm always going to be a work in progress. There's daily things that I am always going to do that keeps my mind right. But yes, I talk to a therapist every day. I take medicine every single day. And I know that both of those things are like dirty words, but what if it helps? You know what I mean? Uh,
Right.
and some people would be like, well, I went to one therapist one time and I hated him. I'm like, okay, well, there's more than one therapist out here in the world. You can try, just like you can date more than, know, I don't suspect that everybody dated or married the first person that they dated. They probably dated a couple people before they found the person that they married. Uh, Therapy works the kind of the same way. If you're not meshing with somebody, you just keep moving on until you find the right person. Medication works the same way, but you got to be honest about, all right, how do I feel? Did this make a difference? Did this make me worse? And do we need to modify it? Just stuff like that. I want to talk 1 minute about something else. If you don't know about culturally competent therapists in your area, and I'm talking specifically about police officers, what I would encourage you to do is to reach out to an organization called Copline, which is it is manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, by retired police officers. So if you call Copline, you are going to talk to somebody that did the job. And if you want resources in your area that had been vetted by Copline, that are culturally competent, that are used to working with first responders, here you go. Here's your resource. You call them and say, my closest major city is Salisbury, Maryland. Can you find me in person? Can you find me telehealth? So they have it broken down by, each state and then major cities. And the reason that I talk about it, a year and a half ago, I decided that I wanted to be involved with Copline. So I went to their training for 40 hours, and I do my 2 shifts a month where I answer hotlines, and I've talked to, a lot of working police officers, and those people can be 6 months on. Those people can be 20 plus years on. Some people are already into retirement. But the fact of the matter is, I've heard a lot of suffering. And a lot of people are just they get to that point where they're stuck and they just can't figure out how do I get past this? And it's kind of like revving your engine while it's still in park. You just can't click it over. So maybe talking to a therapist might be that first thing. And then you start to find these other things, like, again, yoga for me. I like being out in nature. I do cold plunges a couple times a week. All of these things are to keep my mental health right. So that's why I talk about a lot of this stuff.
We do talk about those things a lot of times and say it doesn't matter what you do. Those resources are out there. We tout Copline a lot. I think that's the basic thing that Vance and I are trying to say is, please just do something. And I think one of the greatest thing that I see is we talk about the generational gap right now and some of the things that we deal with the generational gap. But I do have to give it to this new generation. They do care about their well-being.
Mm-hmm.
They really, really do. We can learn something from this generation, but they at least, sometimes to a fault, I'm going to put that in there, but they have a general sense of their own personal well-being. Just care about yourself, care about your family and yourself more than this job, because unfortunately, I think Vance put it a great way earlier, we give a lot to this job. And we put a lot of ourselves in this job, and every cop that I have ever known in my life has been an A100 person towards anything they needed to do with this job. And still to this day, if I make a phone call to any officer I know or any person across this nation who I've come in contact with, they are helpful people to a fault. But you need to do that same for your family, because when you get to that point where you're ready to leave, they'll fill your spot, just like they'll fill anybody else's spot,
Yep.
just like they'll fill my spot when I walk out the door. I get it. It's in our nature, but please take care of yourself. Don't wait so long to do so, because we love y'all. We love what you do. I respect every person that is a first responder, that puts their lives on the line for other people, and that has done this job in law enforcement for as long as they have. Vance, I thank you for all you've done and you're doing, using your platform and coming out here and being able to tell people it's not all fun and glory. Like,
Right.
It takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on you. So if you'd like to leave anything with anybody today, please plug your yoga rescue. I am definitely going. You're not far away from me, so
Right.
put me on this. I'm going to try to come check it out. I will. I'll try anything once.
Come on. I'll teach your, we'll come up. I'll teach your cops for the day or something.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Be awesome.
For anybody that wants to get a hold of me, the easiest way is to actually go through my website, which is yoga-rescue.com. And my phone number's on there, or you can send me a message through there. You can send me an email. Everything is just laid out on there. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. Send me a message through any of those platforms. I will get back to you.
Vance, I thank you for being here today.
Oh, yeah.
For us, we're taping this on a Sunday morning, so we're trying to get it in before football starts. So
Okay. Yep.
So it's been a pleasure. I hope to get a chance to talk to you again.
Yeah.
I think we've started a good thing here. I think what you're doing is awesome, and I thank you for your time, my friend. And please always stay safe and stay careful.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Take care, my friend.
You've been listening to the Deep Blue Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at Deep Blue Project. Find our website at deepblueproject.com, and to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Blue Project.